Hello everybody and welcome to the second video in our series of videos on peace and war in Europe between the years of 1920 and 1945. So in today's videos we are going to look at an organisation known as the League of Nations that will ultimately go down in history as a massive failure. As always, we begin our presentation with our learning outcomes. So by the end of this presentation, you guys should know what the aims of the League of Nations were and what successes it had. Second, you guys should be able to name 3 examples showing where the League failed to ensure peace. And third, you guys should know 3 reasons why the League failed. The League of Nations was founded on the 10th of January 1920 following the conclusion of the Paris Peace Conference that ended World War I, which we looked at in a previous video. If you remember from that video, Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States, had stated in one of his 14 points that a League of Nations should be set up to settle disputes and to ensure peace. With that in mind, the 2 main aims then of the League of Nations were to promote international cooperation. Again, the world is becoming a more global place with the Industrial Revolution having taken place. So to promote the cooperation between countries from all over the world. And second, to achieve international peace so that war on the scale of World War I would never ever be seen again. They used the concept of collective security, which is the idea that each member of the League was responsible for the security and the safety of any of the other members of the League. The League initially started out with 42 members. It set up its headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. And the League was made up of 2 parts. It was made up of a General Assembly, and this General Assembly represented all the member states, all 42 of the member states. Initially, more would join later on. But it also had an executive council, which only had representatives from the major powers, which at the beginning were Britain, France, Italy, and Japan. Any actions taken by the League had to be unanimously agreed upon by all the members. So let's first look at the initial successes of the League of Nations. Initially, they had some successes. They helped to settle a dispute between Sweden and Finland in 1921 over the Åland Islands. They settled a number of territorial disputes between Poland and Albania. And probably the greatest success was to set up a refugees commission at the end of World War I, and this helped to return over 500,000 prisoners of war to their home countries. However, these successes were limited to kind of the immediate post-war period, and the weaknesses of the League was really shown up by 3 major events in the 1930s. First of all, the League failed to deal with the illegal and brutal invasion of Manchuria in northeast China by the Japanese, who conquered and renamed it Manchukuo. We will be looking in a bit more detail at Japan and their aggressive expansion throughout the 1930s leading into World War II. But the League's failure to act showed people that it couldn't protect nations. Another incident happened in 1935 with the Italian invasion of Abyssinia or Ethiopia in Africa. Again, we will be looking at this in greater detail when we look at the reign of Mussolini, but once again it showed the inability of the League of Nations to prevent war from happening. Finally, the third incident that showed the weakness of the League of Nations was the rise of Hitler and his continuous breaking of the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, pushing the boundary. And no real punishment came from the League in the 1930s. And this really did show the weaknesses of the League. So why was the League so weak and why did it fail? The main reason was that the United States, which remember had proposed the League in the first place, didn't join as it had faced opposition from people and politicians at home and getting involved in world disputes. The United States had become the richest country in the world by focusing on itself, and the politicians and the people of America wanted to continue that policy instead of getting involved in the affairs of especially what they would call the old countries of Europe and problems within Asia and Africa. On top of American exclusion, so too Russia or the Soviet Union was excluded. It was not by choice that the Soviet Union, or Russia as it's called, was excluded. They had recently had a socialist revolution, and other countries feared socialism, or Bolshevism as it was known, from spreading to their own countries. Germany also was initially barred from joining the League of Nations. further punishing it, excluding it after the war. Another big issue, the third big issue, was that all decisions had to be unanimous. And this really slowed down any decisions the league would need to make. So if a member state didn't go along with it, they would have to try to convince this member state to adopt the policy they were trying to pursue, and would really slow down the process. Fourth, the League of Nations, it had no army. So it couldn't enforce any of the things that it was saying. Um, and finally, it only relied on economic sanctions or boycotts of any countries that ignored their rulings. However, as seen with Japan and Italy and Germany in the 1930s, they could easily break these sanctions by simply ignoring them. That brings us to the end of our presentation. So you guys should now know what the aims of the League of Nations were and what some of the successes it had, such as the Refugee Commission and the territorial disputes. Third, you guys should be able to name 3 examples showing where the League failed to ensure peace. So the invasion of Manchuria, the invasion of Abyssinia, and the German breaking of the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. Finally, you guys should know 3 reasons why the League failed. The United States wasn't a member, Russia and Germany weren't members, the need for unanimous decisions, the fact it had no army, and also the fact that it could only rely on economic sanctions and boycotts, which were easily ignored. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys got something useful from this video.